You know, it's really interesting. I moved here 6 years ago from San Francisco, and I really knew nothing about North Carolina. I came here to work at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences right when it opened its new wing, the Nature Research Center over there, and with a big emphasis on science communication and outreach. So I came to be part of that. And I knew nothing about North Carolina, frankly, and it was interesting. When I was moving here, Amendment 1 was like being voted on, and I moved into a neighborhood in East Mordecai, and people had signs that were against Amendment 1. Well, I'm new here, and I'm like, well, all my neighbors are against Amendment 1. I'm afraid to ask, what is Amendment 1? And of course, it was the first state amendment to our state constitution, and it was something that I think most of us would agree is completely unconstitutional for anything in the United States, outlawing a certain kind of marriage. So it was really bizarre to come here from San Francisco and to discover that this has historically been such a progressive state, and I think the past 6 years has been less progressive. But as our next speaker just said to me, it can be progressive again. Our next speaker is an advocate for human rights. He's an NC lobbyist for, he's director of transgender policy for Equality NC, and a lobbyist right here. So he's very familiar with this, where we are. And so he's got a lot to say about HB2 and LGBTQ issues. Help me welcome to the stage, Ames Simmons.
Evidence-based, diversity, fetus, entitlement, vulnerable, science-based, transgender. Good morning, Raleigh. My name is Ames Simmons, and I represent that last word. I am a queer transgender man. My pronouns are he and him in English and él en español. And I am Equality North Carolina's Director of Transgender Policy, and we work to secure equality and justice for queer, trans, lesbian, gay, and bisexual North Carolinians. I also serve on the National Board of Directors for the Human Rights Campaign, the country's largest civil rights organization working to achieve equality for LGBTQ people. And I'm here to speak to you this morning about how important science is in addressing health disparities among marginalized communities, especially transgender people and people living with HIV. There's a long history in our country of subjecting people we don't understand to junk science that oppresses marginalized communities. The fact that our current federal government was rumored to have outlawed the use of those 7 words, including evidence-based, science-based, diversity, transgender, is evidence that these fake theories are on the rise and are resurging. Equality North Carolina co-signed a letter along with 160 other organizations, including the Human Rights Campaign, who has a table here, to the federal departments of state and health and human services, calling out this suppression of speech and thought. We should all care about the decline of evidence-based policymaking and the rise of legislation and appropriations based on moral disapproval and judgment. For example, our government has spent more than $2 billion on abstinence-only education programs, which are now rebranded as sexual risk avoidance, that are medically inaccurate, ineffective, and harmful to trans and queer youth. These approaches are based not in developmentally appropriate risk-based information, but in fear and shaming tactics towards trans and queer youth. Or look at the junk science that's been used to prop up discrimination against transgender military service members. Right here in North Carolina, we saw psychiatrist Paul McHugh's junk theories that trans people are confused and mad used to argue in a Greensboro newspaper op-ed that trans people are unfit for military service. The special report that McHugh used was co-authored by Lawrence Mayer, a biostatistician who was paid $400 an hour to testify in proceedings related to HB2, where he concluded that, scientifically speaking, transgender men are not biological men and transgender women are not biological women. The claims to the contrary are not supported by a scintilla of scientific evidence, according to Mr. Mayer. In fact, we know that major medical societies have acknowledged that trans people exist, we are not mythical unicorns, and that we thrive when we have access to affirming medical care. Affirming people for who they are in all their diversity. There's one of those words again. That's been proven to result in better health outcomes, as opposed to denying the personhood of entire categories of people or seeking to punish them for who they are. That is why Equality North Carolina continues to advocate, along with our partners, NC AIDS Action Network, who also have a table here, against laws that criminalize HIV, which studies have shown have no detectable HIV prevention effect. This March, more than 200 researchers and scientists signed a letter denouncing the decline of evidence-based policymaking around HIV, especially the $1.2 billion of cuts to global HIV programs. The kind of actual science we should be supporting in policy decisions includes peer-reviewed research to improve the lives of people living with HIV. We know from reading Thomas Kuhn that the structure of scientific revolutions involves paradigm shifts. With HIV, as with trans health and education, the understanding of these issues in the medical and research communities has undergone near wholesale transformation over time as we have investigated them according to the scientific method. When we vote for politicians who make policy based on false stereotypes of marginalized communities instead of actual data rooted in scientific methodology, we threaten to set back progress in our country to the dark ages of superstition. Like Dr. Maya Angelou said, when we know better, we do better. That's all we are asking. When we know better, we have to legislate and govern better. Thank you.
Thank you, Ames Simmons from Equality NC.